Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. By the time this airs on Monday, we will know if this shirt was a good idea or not. I'm going to kick off this video with a review of the documentary Beyond Impossible. I've had a couple of viewers ask me if I had seen it, and last night I did. When I pulled it up on my smart TV, I saw that it was by Vinnie Tortorich, who did the documentary Fat, a documentary. Every time I say that, I feel like Austin Powers when he'd say, "Allow myself to introduce myself." That was not a very good Austin Powers imitation. But I reviewed Fat. I had to go back and take a look at previous podcasts. It was actually podcast number 2 where I reviewed that movie. It was almost 3 years ago right now. I mean, it was, I think, January 27th of 2020. So, anyhow, pretty close to 3 years. Crazy that we're still doing these podcasts. I don't know. You keep watching, I'll keep making them. But to recap my review of Fat, a documentary, I think at the time I said I would give it a 7 out of 10. Then I watched a few other documentaries that were sort of pro-keto or pro-meat or anti-sugar, anti-grain. I think Magic Pill was one of them. Sacred Cow was one. I recall Sacred Cow. I think I liked that an awful lot. I don't completely remember. I should probably watch that again. And after watching those, I kind of felt like Fat, a documentary, maybe didn't deserve a 7. Maybe it deserved a 6, possibly, 6.5. My big issues with Fat, a documentary were, well, the biggest one is they actually show an amputation, a diabetic foot amputation. And to me, it just, the shock value of that kind of felt inappropriate. Now, I've had some viewers say, maybe that's what people need. They need the shock of seeing that. But I don't know that, a carboholic that's maybe going down that diabetes path is necessarily the sort of person that would watch that movie and then be shocked into, giving up sugar and grains. But so that was one issue. I mean, I thought I was watching a documentary about food, not Faces of Death. The other issues that I had with the movie all kind of revolve around Vinnie Tortorich himself. First off, although there were a lot of different people that were interviewed or contributed to this, all of them had sort of in a studio type of a setup, the backdrop or in an office or something like that. Whereas Vinnie was sitting near a fireplace. It looked like he was in a cabin or something like that. I kind of almost expected him to have a pipe and be reading The Night Before Christmas or something. And also, over the course of the documentary, it seemed like he was getting more and more fired up and or irritable. The other thing that I had sort of an issue with in the movie is there's a portion of it where he talks about when he was on Oprah. It was an episode about older women dating younger men, and they basically gave him a script and said, here's what you're going to say, so that it fits the narrative of the story. And I kind of get why he included that, because I think what he was showing is how the media will manipulate information or create their own narrative. And they have created a narrative that is anti-keto. Keto is bad. But that whole segment felt just like it went on too long for me. It felt like a speed bump, and it kind of felt like maybe, Vinnie was stroking his own ego or something like that. But enough about Fat. Let's get into Beyond Impossible, which draws from the name Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat. I think those are the two products, the fake meat, or as they would call it, plant-based meat, which to me, that phrase makes zero sense at all. Like, you can't have meat-based broccoli, so how can you call something meat if it's not made out of meat? That's just Steve's opinion. Now, when I looked up the movie, it had 5 stars out of 10 on Internet Movie Database. I didn't read any reviews prior to watching it, so I went in sort of with the mentality that this was going to be a 5-star sort of a movie. And I don't know that I would have given it a full 5 stars. I think maybe a 4 out of 10, 3 out of 10. So let me talk about some of my issues with this movie. First off, it didn't really feel so much like a documentary as just a completely unscripted diatribe. I mean, there's no hiding the bias in this particular movie. Vinnie has an axe to grind with vegans. And that's what it is for the full length of the movie. And I found that by about a half an hour in, I was starting to get bored. I felt like I had seen and heard everything that needed to be said. And that kind of played out for the next hour or so after that. This is one of those movies where I found myself continually looking at my watch and wondering, is this almost over yet? And I say it felt unscripted because there didn't really seem to be a narrative flow to it. It was just random clips of vegans or vegetarians and the people from Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat and other, vegetarian advocates. And then Vinny just basically doing the total hit piece sort of thing. Now, I don't have an issue with vegans. To me, if somebody wants to eat that way, I mean, any way that people want to eat, that's their business, that's their choice. I have an issue with people, whether it's vegans or whether it's carnivore or whether it's standard American diet, that like telling other people how they should eat and getting all up in their grill about that. And Vinny shows a lot of that sort of behavior. And I realize that behavior does exist with certain vegans, just like it exists in any facet of the world. I mean, there's going to be people that have strong opinions about stuff and are going to be vocal about it. But I really kind of felt that this documentary, well, I mean, it definitely shows the worst side of vegans. And that's all it shows. There's really nothing in the way of balance in this. And Vinny said that he did invite some doctors, professors, vegan advocates to appear in this documentary, and they all turned him down. Still, I think if Vinny really wanted to present something that seemed unbiased and fair, he could have found somebody that represents the vegan aspect of things. Now, while I was watching the movie, I was taking notes on my phone, and at 24 minutes in, Vinny says something, and I'm not going to tell you what he says because it's sort of spoiler, but he says something that really, it's the whole point of the movie, and they could have just ended it right there. And what's funny is about a minute later, they put up a big card, or graphic on the screen saying 24 minutes, 1 second. And then Vinny comes back on and says, at 24 minutes, I summed it up for you, or something to that effect. So it's kind of funny. I was thinking the exact same thing right before he said it. Now, it's entirely possible that my not super positive opinion of this movie stems from my own expectations about what it could have been. I guess, to me, when you have a negative message, and it's just pounding that negative message, I tend to fatigue on that. And I think it tends to be a bit of a turnoff for a lot of people. I think it would be far better had he positioned this as what are the positives of keto or low carb or no sugar, no grain, whatever you want to call it. I think that would have been a far better message for this movie. I think another opportunity that Vinny had in this movie that he kind of let slip by was to discuss the cost of food. I think if he wanted to put sort of an attack together on big food, addressing the cost of food, especially cheap food, junk food. I mean, if you want to find the cheapest food, it's just loaded with carbs and sugar and just garbage. And that then is going to be what's purchased as food by people who are financially challenged. I don't know if it's safe to say poor or if that's going to offend somebody, but the people that do not have the income to be eating steak and broccoli every night. I think it would have been fairly easy to connect the dots there between big food creating garbage food for the poor who then are going to get sick and then rely on big pharma. And then tie that back to media, because all you need to do is open a magazine or watch a TV show and see who is paying for this, who is buying ads. Big pharma is a big chunk. I don't want to be like a conspiracy theorist, but it's hard not to kind of see that connection. So then after watching it, I did get out onto the Internet Movie Database and looked at the reviews, and in statistics, we call this a bimodal distribution. So it wasn't like everybody was clustered around 5, like 4, 5, 6. You basically had a bunch of 1s and then higher numbers, like 9s and 10s. And, you could see the obvious bias in the reviewers as well. Anyhow, if you've watched it and you've got an opinion, whether that's agreeing with me or disagreeing with me, please let me know down in the comments below. Probably what I'll do in the next month or so is I'll watch Fat 2 and see what I think of that. But if you're interested in watching it, I know it's available on Tubi right now. If you've got that service, it's free with ads. I think you can also rent it on Amazon Prime. I'll include a link down below for Amazon Prime, just in case by the time you watch this video, if it's not on Tubi anymore. Last week, I released a video, the first video in my beginners series for keto, and I talked about the 10 rules of keto, or what I would say are the top 10 tips that I would have for keto. And the first one is don't tell people you're doing keto, because for some reason people just think keto is dirty and awful and evil. Shortly after recording that, I was watching a football game, and what team is Nick Bosa on? Oh, the 49ers. So the announcers were talking about Nick Bosa, linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers, and how he is 266 pounds and 3% body fat, according to the DEXA scan he had back in August. That is amazing. But they talked about his diet, and it's basically no carbs. Well, that's what the announcer said. No carbs. No bread, no spaghetti, no pasta, none of that stuff. No sugar. And the announcers were talking about just what a healthy lifestyle this must be. I'm sure if he said, I'm doing keto, and he's not exactly really doing keto. I'm guessing he's probably in ketosis, though. But he's not doing strict keto. He's doing a higher protein. He is eating a lot of seafood. It said in one of the articles that I read that he does drink fruit juice in the morning. But it's basically just lots of seafood and vegetables, very high protein, and pretty much no carbs. And it just gave me a little bit of a smile, given that I had just recorded something similar for that video about how the way we frame how we eat and how we describe what we eat to other people goes a long way towards whether or not they're going to judge us and tell us we're going to die and, your arteries are going to clog and all of that. Periodically, I'll talk about some of these sponsorship offers that I get on this channel and how many of them I turn down. I think now that we're in the new year, there must be some sort of a marketing blitz going on at a lot of different companies because, man, have I gotten a lot in the last week. I've also said that one of my criteria for whether I even read any of these emails or direct messages that I get from these companies is if they can address me by my name. Most of the time it's like Dear Serious or Dear Keto or Hey There. I see anything like that, don't even read, just delete. So just in this past week, I've probably deleted 5 or 6 that didn't pass that litmus test. There were 3, however, that did refer to me as Steve, so I actually read them. One was for a company that makes I'm looking at my notes here. One was a company that makes coffee pods. And I don't have a Keurig or whatever, any sort of a pod making coffee machine. I don't think I'd want one. I use a French press. Then here was a weird one. It's a pulse electromagnetic field therapy cold laser that you put on your wrist. The thing, it looks big. It looks like something out of a 1970s science fiction movie that you would put on your wrist, like a tricorder or something like that. I don't know. The 3 things that they claim this device does are it cures rhinitis. And I had to look this up. It's a stuffy nose. That's what rhinitis is. Blood diseases, just generic blood diseases. They don't specify any of them. And it's good for detox. So apparently wearing this thing on your wrist takes care of that. I told them no. I also had a company called I Heart Keto Mart reach out to me, and they appear to be basically a one-stop shop for every keto product or keto labeled or keto friendly labeled product. And, that just didn't really feel like the right fit to me as well. I feel like I'm already involved with enough keto companies that I'm not really taking on more. And then the final one was LMNT or Element. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it because I've never actually watched any of their ads. Anytime I see a content creator that's like in the middle of a cooking video and then they sort of awkwardly insert this LMNT promo, I stop watching. Now, I'm not throwing shade at anybody that does that. Any other content creators, that is absolutely your right to do. You got to make money. This is a way to make money. But me personally, that's just, it feels kind of forced. I suppose maybe if it were like a workout channel or something like that, people are working up a sweat and toweling off, and then they have a drink of LMNT or Element. Again, I should probably find out what it's actually called. But that to me seems to make more sense than if you're busy making, cabbage rolls or something like that, and then suddenly you stop to, show off your little bottle of Element. But I'll say again, if you are a content creator, it is entirely your right to do that, and I'm not throwing shade at you. It's just not something that I'm doing. If I'm ever going to do some sort of promo where I'm showing off a product in the middle of a video, it's going to be an actual cooking sort of product. So, if Ninja is out there and listening, or Crowd Cow, I've mentioned this in the past, Crowd Cow, get on this. Throw me some Wagyu beef. Let's talk. So I'll keep my fingers crossed that a company like that reaches out to me and decides to sponsor the show. But until that happens, you shouldn't probably be expecting to see any of those sort of promos inserted into my videos. But what you will see more of on this channel is my wife, Terry. She is, I think I'm starting to win her over to keto a little bit. I call what she does Keto Plus. So it's basically keto plus Cheetos and cookies and wine. Still, she's starting to get more into the keto cooking, so baby steps. It's a good thing. I think it kind of started when we went out to Utah to Keto Chow. She's now become a big Keto Chow fan. Beyond that, she has also started to become my camera person, or phone camera person. You may have noticed on some of my videos, instead of doing that direct overhead shot of the food prep, it's now handheld, and I kind of like it. It allows me to focus more on the cooking and less on the technological aspects, and then I can just do a voiceover afterwards. I don't have to think about what I'm saying while I'm doing it. I can just focus on the recipe. And it does make the whole editing process a little bit more complicated, but it goes more smoothly. It also makes setup a lot easier because I don't have to goof around with multiple cameras and multiple tripods and things like that. But ultimately, my favorite part of it is it's something that Terry and I are doing together. And it's fun. It's fun when someone you love is sharing your interest and sharing your passion, and it's cool. So as Terry continues to flex her keto culinary creativity, you may expect to see her actually making some recipes. She did this amazing Egyptian rice, and it used hearts of palm rice, and she just threw it together, and it was really awesome. So that may be a future video, by the way. But yeah, hopefully you'll start seeing more of her on the camera and some of her original recipes. But that is going to be it for this podcast. If the Packers lose tonight, which would have been last night if you're watching this on Monday, please don't rub my nose in it. That would hurt my feelings. Anyhow, as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.